So, okay, the first thing to do, so this is your schedule, Doug, and the first thing we need to do, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Got you
yeah, so,
loud.
yeah, that's my email. I'll just let me turn my email off. Otherwise, I'll keep getting messages. The first thing we need to do is to make a baseline. So on the project tab, there's a baseline manager button, and you get this dialog. And all you've got to do is say you're going to make a new baseline. So, and it's at this moment in time, it's going to take a duplicate copy. So if you want the monetary values in there, you've got to put money in before you do this, and your schedule needs to be complete before you do this, because you're now going to change the plan, and you're going to use this one to compare it against. So this is
Pretty much
typically
any changes, any additions to the schedule, like
will
you
not
said,
be
Brian,
in the
change them.
baseline.
Okay, got you.
You could add them to the baseline, but that would then, I would suggest, really be a separate baseline.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had extra work to do that wasn't in the original schedule, then it wouldn't have a baseline task against it. So, but that's exactly the same as it was in P6, really. It's just that we would say we're going to make a new baseline, and so let's call this our original plan. So this is the baseline's internal description, and this is the file name that we're going to give it, and by default we give it an underscore and a 0 afterwards, but just to make it obvious, I often give it, change the file name as well. So that's the file name, and previously that was the internal name. So if I click on finish, it then creates that plan, and we also by default give it a color, which has in this case been yellow. Okay, so by default in your project, it's displaying the baseline. So all of these little yellow tasks underneath the main task, that is the baseline act, which is of course exactly the same as is at the moment. You don't have to display the baseline. That's one of the format options. So the baseline can be there, but you can turn it off and on again. You with me?
Yes, sir. Yep, following. Yep.
Okay. So that's the first thing to do, you don't have to do that, but if you don't do that, you can't make a variance against what it was originally. Okay. So the next thing to do is to go into the Library Explorer and to create a progress period. You don't have to create a progress period. This big black line down the screen is the progress period that is called project report date. If I double click on that on the bar chart, I get this dialog. If I right mouse click on it over here and say properties, I get the same dialog. So here I could change the report date and say, well, time has moved on, and it's moved on by a week, and so this is the time. So we could move this line forward rather than making a new line. And every week you would change that and move it on by a week. You'd only have one report line, which is really where you're at with P6. So you can do it that way, and the only advantage of doing it, and I think with you've got single, yeah. So so if I put that back to what it was before, and if we make another one, we can't make a new one here. We have to go to the Library Explorer, and under the progress period folder, we make another one called week 1. But we're thinking ahead, and so by default, it adds on a week. And so you've got Monday at midnight. So that is, I think it's a lot safer to use Sunday. So it's the end of the week. This is, and I'm assuming you're going to update it like Friday afternoon, and this is the state of play on Monday. So the second thing is you can give this progress period and line a different color. So let's just, and then we're going to say, well, we might as well make a few here. We've got week 2, and it will add a week on 7 days. It'll add the gap between the previous 2, and it will choose a random color. And I think you need to choose quite strong colors so that you can, easily see them. You don't have to use colors. You could use, they could all be the same. So we've made a few, and they're now visible in our progress period list. But the active one, the one that the reschedule will be based on, is whichever one's got the tick. And you can change the one that's got the tick by right mouse clicking and clicking on progress entry period. So then it shows you the blue line. That is going to be time now. Okay. And just so you know, because this is recorded, that in the reschedule options, this is where you say which progress period it should act on. And if you choose the progress entry period, that is the one with the tick. So you also need to do that to make sure it's correct. So if we make that one, it's still the black one. So
okay, go ahead. You might tell me this, but like when you do your update, like as far as your percentage of work as what is completed, do you do that in the bar chart view, or would you do that in the progress?
No, exactly. I'm just going to switch to that. So I just wanted to, I mean, I think that's important, Doug, that you go to that and you change that option there, okay? Because at the moment you would always be scheduling against the original date and not against the new date that you've put in.
So, for example,
let's move forward now. So we're going to change now to the progress view, because this has got a different table than the bar chart view. So this has been set up. So I've got the planned dates. So they're the dates that we plan to do in the baseline. Okay, that's so these are the planned date. These are the actual dates that we haven't filled in yet. This is the percent complete that we haven't filled in, and this is the planned percent complete. And that's not showing anything because we haven't yet chosen our progress period. So if we say time's moved on by a week, so when I choose my progress period, you see this column is now refreshed to show a value, and it's saying by this date, by the end of the blue line, this is what you should have done. Okay. So maybe this week, everything's gone according to plan. Okay. And it's all gone according to exactly the dates that you had before. So I could say that we've done 100% on that particular activity. And so then you see the top part of that activity, and maybe I'll zoom in so you can see this. The top part of the activity is marked up with the same color as the progress period to show you that that thing is done, and the line now goes across to the 31st. So any activity that's not completed, so if I type 100 in there, it pushes the report line to the left. So if I move this, you see, and I'm going to undo that because you've got auto scheduling on, have you?
No. Looks like it's off.
No, it's off. That's okay. So why is it moved? Oh, that's because that's fine. Yeah, you should. I think when you're adding progress, you should have the auto schedule off, because you don't want to schedule it till you've put all the progress in. So what I could do there is I could copy that value, and because I'm doing all of those, I could paste it. So I could update all of them in one go. That's one way of doing it. I'm going to undo that. So I could also click on one, shift click on the last one so that they're all selected, and then I could use either up here or down here. I could use this selector to multiple select. So you can do a group edit. You don't have to do each one in turn, Doug. Yeah. So now we've got to the end of week, the end of the first week. We've put the progress in. We can see the line straight. Technically, we should reschedule, but everything's fine. Everything's on schedule. So let's think about what happens next week. So time has moved on a week. Okay, so we're going to change the progress entry. So that line moves forward. So now it's the orange line, and these columns have been updated as well to say this is all, this is what you should have done. These should all have been 100%, and that means that the yellow bit should have been done. So this column is looking at the baseline to say what amount of work should have been done at the date that you've given it for the orange line. So then again, you could say, well, it's all gone quite well, but in fact, so again, just to so if I copy that and say, well, these three, let's just do three because quickly. So these three paste, so that they all went according to schedule. But this one, which should have finished on the 3rd of November, this one didn't finish until the 4th of November. I know we're jumping ahead of ourselves here, aren't we? So we've put an actual date in. So this is now taking us 2 days instead of 1 day, hasn't it?
Yes.
So, and it's pushed this task out because actually it's not rescheduling it, but these are tasks on one line. And so it's pushed this one out because they can't overlap. That's what's happened to it. So that's the state of play. You haven't yet done the roof patch back, which should have been done and hasn't done. So there's a -1 day variance. So to see the impact of that on the rest of the schedule, we need to hit the reschedule button. And then that moves all other uncompleted activities into the future. Yeah. So everything has now got a 1 day delay on it. And if you're saying, well, shit, that was our fault, what are we going to do about it? So, you know, what could you do about it? You know, you could choose to do that on a different day. So you could have said to the guys, right, you've got to work overtime on Saturday to pull that back. So you could change the calendar on that activity to work 7 days a week. So you could say, well, I'm going to work 7 days a week on that activity. So you don't see anything that's happened. But you see, as I move it backwards in time, it disappears because in this view, and this is a complication perhaps we don't need, we've been folding weekends out. So really, if I go back to this view, and what I should perhaps also display is we also show the weekends. So on screen, I've got green lines. Yeah.
And that illustrates the weekends, correct? The green.
Yeah, so this task, because I've given it a set, this can now happen inside the weekend. So we could say, well, our solution to that problem is we talked to the roofing contractor, he agreed he could come in, and he actually did it on the Saturday. So when we schedule again, nothing's overrun. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that wasn't possible. Maybe he couldn't do it this weekend, and you're talking about, so I'm going to undo all of that, okay, so that we go back to the point where we see that that's where you're at. That guy couldn't work on this Saturday, but maybe there's an opportunity to do something next week and catch up in another way. So this is what we should be doing next week. So the roofing guy's got to do, but what he's promised to do do that next week. So we're going to change next week's calendar to make this available to start earlier. Okay. So if we schedule now without any progress, that brings us back on plan because we intend to work in a day that we weren't going to work before. Now, maybe it's not your fault. Maybe something happened in the ceiling that meant it was 2 days that was outside your scope of works. And so in that case, you would be looking to the employer to reimburse you for the extra cost of weekend work, or you would be claiming what we call, in Europe we call an extension of time, and that is that you're not going to ask anybody to work overtime and you're going to accept the fact that you are going to deliver the project one day late and it's no fault of yours, and you can't be fined for it. So that's your sort of choice at that moment in time. So let us assume this is something within your own control. It's inside the contract, so you've got to control it. At the moment, you're saying, well, we are reporting a day late, so it's the end of this week, so we're going to change the progress period. I'm going to change the calendar on the roofing task, which is going to happen on the Saturday. All of these things, I'm going to say, have been done on time. So we're back to all of that's been done, and that one was also done that week. So the roofer guy came in twice, and now we reschedule it, and now we're back on program. So I'm going to stop the recording that, because that is really what you need to do.
Okay.
So if we were to add a new task, so we would insert a new row and say, new task, whatever it happens to be, and you'd be saying, well, we've got this new thing that we've just discovered that's going to take us 2 days to do, and we've got to do that before we can do the rest of this, So then we're going to reschedule and see the impact of that. So the big question contractually is this your fault, or is this an extra piece of work? And if it's an extra piece of work, you're just going to say, well, we can't hand over on the original date, we're going to be 2 days late. Or you're going to say, well, actually, thinking about it, we could put a bit of extra temporary works up, and we could say, we could start this a day into that activity. So we could say, well, that link could start not at the start of it, but sorry, it's probably easier just to delete that link and redraw it. You can move it, but it's probably easier to say one day. We could start that one day into it. We don't have to do it at the end. So long as the whole thing's finished by the time this happens, everything will be fine. So actually we've reduced the impact to a day, but there's some extra cost in putting a bit of scaffolding up or protection or something, So there are commercial and contractual issues in it, but if that is the very best that we can do, then there is the only other way of making the project come in on time is to reduce something else that's got to happen later on. So you could say, well, we've also talked to the supply chain about these post installations, and there is a feeling that actually we don't need this delay here because that's happening over the Christmas period, so we don't need that delay. So if we edit that logic and take that delay away, because it's happening over Christmas, whatever is drying or curing or whatever, and so we can reschedule it and we can bring the project back on time. So look, Mr. Klein, I've achieved what we wanted to do, and we've got this extra thing. But there's no point us comparing ourselves now to what we said we would do originally, because this is a new situation. So really what I would say, because this is a new situation, I'm going to make a second baseline, another baseline. So that's with our variation number 1 in it. And again, we by default, we give the file name an _1 at the end, but I might just, for my own knowledge, change it to be that. So now I've got a second baseline in my list. I can give this one a different color. And so at the moment we can see we got both of them on screen. One of them is what we nominate as called the current, so we can set any of them to be the current one, and that doesn't necessarily turn it off on screen, and that screen display is governed by the format bar chart baseline, where we can choose whether to show it for, we don't want to see things from the original plan, we only want to see it from the new one. So obviously now everything, there is no variance because everything's on schedule, because it has to be, doesn't it? This is the new way forward.